Today, I want to talk to you about something that has completely transformed how I live, work, and care for myself. I call it the self-care of no. This is a story about boundaries, but not the kind that come from pop psychology or productivity culture. This is about the boundaries that arise from knowing yourself, from understanding your nervous system, and from the deep cultural truth that saying no is not selfish or rude, it's survival. And for many of us, it's the only way we've ever found our way back to ourselves. Self-care for autistic people is often misrepresented as routines, checklists, or coping strategies. But for us, it's deeper than that. Autistic self-care is cultural. It's sensory regulation, restorative boundaries, nervous system alignment, and refusal to perform. Saying no is not avoidance, it's a form of care. Self-care isn't always a bubble bath. It's not always an app, a timer, or a step-by-step guide. For autistic people, self-care is something more primal and less performative. It's about becoming home to the rhythms that actually work for our bodies and our brains. It's about refusing to mask our needs to fit someone else's schedule or mood. It's about building lives that don't require constant recovery. I used to think self-care meant getting better at keeping up. I thought I just needed to manage myself better, be more responsive, get more done. But I was burning out over and over again. What I needed wasn't better management. I needed alignment. I needed to stop saying yes when my entire body was screaming no. I needed to stop performing accessibility to everyone and start becoming accessible to myself. Autistic people are often conditioned to be helpful, accommodating, easy to manage, high achieving, and non-disruptive. We're rewarded for compliance and punished for refusal. This isn't about being good. It's about being accessible to others at the expense of ourselves. Saying yes when we want to say no is a survival response, not a sign of wellness. Growing up, I learned to be good. I was praised when I was quiet and polite, when I didn't take up space, when I tried harder than anyone else. I wasn't praised for being myself. I was praised for being palatable and presentable. And like many of you, I learned to overfunction in order to survive, especially as an undiagnosed autistic girl. I was so afraid of being seen as lazy, difficult, or rude that I became a yes machine. Yes to school, yes to work, yes to caregiving, yes to things that broke me. But being good wasn't real. It was a trap. It kept me exhausted and disconnected from my own needs. And the worst part is, people called it success. The constant yes leads to chronic autistic burnout, emotional exhaustion, executive dysfunction, shutdown, and resentment or dissociation. Overgiving is not sustainable, and it's often expected most from those perceived as competent, high masking, or strong. Refusing to self-abandon is self-care. For a long time, I was running Fish in a Tree entirely on my own. We offered free support groups, curated programming, community events, consulting sessions, and I was writing 3 to 4 articles a day, every single day. I was facilitating groups, managing communications, handling grant reporting, writing new grants, and also trying to mother 3 kids. People saw the output, they praised the work, but they didn't see the cost. My nervous system was frayed. I was waking up with a sense of dread. I felt hollow by noon most days. I was still writing beautiful things, still holding space for others, but inside I was disappearing. I kept saying yes out of fear that saying no would mean failure or abandonment. I thought saying yes made me strong, but it was killing me. Saying no is how we protect our actual values. Many of the expectations we're trained to meet, especially in workplaces, schools, and social settings, are built on neurotypical norms. These norms reward surface-level politeness, instant replies, overscheduling, and the idea that being valuable means being endlessly productive. But autistic culture values something different. We value honesty over niceness, depth over efficiency. We feel best when we can pace ourselves, regulate our senses, and speak truth without worrying it'll cost us our relationships. I didn't have this language until much later in life. For years, I thought I was just failing at what everyone else seemed to handle fine. But when I started connecting with other autistic adults, especially late diagnosed women, I realized I wasn't broken. I was just living in a world that demanded I betray my natural rhythms to earn belonging. Saying no became my way of reclaiming those rhythms. The self-care of no is a rejection of urgency culture, a refusal to be extractable, a sensory and emotional boundary, a method of regulation, and a cultural act of reclamation. No is not failure. No is clarity. The self-care of no isn't about defiance for the sake of it. It's about saying, this is where I end, this is what I can give, and this is what I need. It's a refusal to be used up. It's how we keep our bodies regulated, our minds clear, and our presence rooted. One of the biggest changes I made was to stop chasing more. I stopped trying to answer every message. I stopped applying for grants that would expand us beyond what was sustainable. I stopped trying to build something that looked successful and started building something that felt aligned. Every time I said no to an expectation that didn't fit, I felt a little more like myself again. Saying no opens the door to creative flow and focus, more sustainable relationships, fewer shutdowns and meltdowns, less masking and emotional labor, and a deeper connection to your values. Boundaries are not walls. They are pathways to presence. When I started saying no more intentionally, everything began to shift. My work felt deeper. The people who showed up were more attuned. The conversations got richer. I wasn't scattered across 10 roles at once. I was rooted in the work I actually wanted to do. I created space for writing. I created space for rest. I created space to just be without performing availability. That shift allowed me to start building the book I had always wanted to write. The Trouble with Being Good was born from the spaciousness, and the community group I created to support it, the Circle for Late Discovered Autistic Women, grew not because I pushed harder, but because I aligned more deeply. Saying no gave me back my life. Autistic people often know something is wrong before we can explain it. Our bodies speak before our words catch up. That's not dysfunction, it's sensory intelligence. For many of us, the first signal that we need to set a boundary doesn't come as a logical thought, but as a feeling in our bodies: tightness in the chest, a racing heart, irritability, nausea, dread, shutdown. We might feel heavy and immovable, or agitated and scattered. We may not always have the words in the moment, but we feel the mismatch. That's our nervous system doing its job. I used to override those signals constantly. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that I could push through, that other people needed me more than I needed rest. But my body kept the score. I ended up in cycles of shutdown, resentment, and deep exhaustion. It wasn't until I started listening to those early cues and treating them as valid data that I was able to start making choices that supported my own well-being. Now I trust the tightness in my chest. I trust the sense of dread. If my body is saying no, then my answer is no. I'd like you to ask yourself these questions. What am I giving time or energy to out of obligation? Where am I saying yes to avoid guilt or conflict? What am I not doing because I'm too drained by overgiving? And what does my no make space for? Saying no isn't the end of connection, it's the beginning of truth. These are the questions I ask myself often. I don't always have the answers right away. Sometimes they live in my journal for a while. Sometimes they show up in my body first, in a headache that won't go away, or a tightness in my chest that I can't explain. But when I sit with them, when I stop and listen, what I usually find is that my no isn't about rejection or avoidance. It's about my truth. It's about care. And it's about my nervous system trying to lead me somewhere safer, slower, and more honest. And when I follow that no, when I listen and trust it, I almost always find that it leads me back to myself. It makes space for the things I actually want to do. It clears the way for deeper creativity, richer connection, and a steadier rhythm. So I invite you to do the same. Pick one small place where you've been overriding your no. Write it down. Hold it with compassion. That's where your self-care begins. Before we keep going, I want to offer you something we're not often given in presentations like this: a pause, a true pause. Not to check your phone, not to regroup for the next agenda item, a pause to be with yourself. The self-care of no isn't about becoming more efficient. It's not a productivity hack. It's not about finally managing your schedule well enough to not feel overwhelmed. It's about listening and listening inward, to let your body speak and to believe it. If you're in a place where you feel safe to do so, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. You can just soften your gaze if that's more comfortable. Let your breath slow a little. Let your shoulders drop if they want to. And ask yourself very gently, where in my body do I feel yes? Where in my body do I feel no? What happens in my body when I abandon my no to make others comfortable? Just take a moment and see if a particular part of your body responds: your chest, your throat, your stomach, your jaw. There may be tightness or heat, or a pulse or a flutter. Let yourself notice without needing to fix anything. Now place your hand over the place where your no lives. Maybe that place has gone quiet. Maybe it's speaking loudly. Just hold it and breathe into it. You don't have to explain your no. You don't have to make it legible to anyone else. It is real because you feel it. When we begin to feel our no, to let it move from instinct to expression, we reclaim something that has always belonged to us: our boundaries, our time, and our peace. You don't owe anyone your energy. You are allowed to pause, and you are allowed to feel your no. Autistic self-care is not a checklist. It's a practice of alignment. It's what happens when we stop managing other people's comfort and start honoring our own needs. It's a radical shift from performance to presence, from depletion to reclamation. Saying no is not a failure. It's how we protect our energy, our integrity, and our sense of well-being. When I stopped trying to serve everyone and started focusing on what aligned with my values and truth, everything changed for me. My work deepened. My relationships became more mutual. I found my own rhythm, and I stopped burning out. I found joy again, not in being good, but in being real. The self-care of no is the threshold we cross when we decide that our lives, our bodies, and our energy are not for endless consumption. They are sacred. They are worthy of protection. No is not a rejection. As we've said, it's attunement. It's not the door slamming shut. It's the door finally fitting in its frame. Saying no doesn't mean you're failing at relationships or neglecting your responsibilities. It means you're listening to yourself. It means you're choosing clarity over confusion, presence over performance, and alignment over approval. This has been one of the hardest things for me to learn. I was raised in a home where the word no was not allowed. Saying no was selfish, disrespectful, and unacceptable. I was expected to be available, accommodating, and easy to manage. Even as an adult, that conditioning lived inside of me. It showed up in my work, in my relationships, and in the way I ran Fishnetry. I felt like I had to say yes to everyone, or I wasn't doing enough. But it just wasn't sustainable, and it wasn't honest, and it certainly wasn't working. When I started saying no, not with anger or explanation, just with clarity, something shifted. I began to unlearn urgency culture. I began to build something that actually honored my neurodivergent rhythm. I began to believe that my boundaries didn't make me difficult, they made me a whole person. Not everyone is my audience, and that's not a failure. It's a boundary. This sentence was hard won. For most of my life, I tried to be everything for everyone, to be liked, to be understood, to be accommodating. But that effort was endless, and it nearly broke me. I didn't realize how much energy I was giving to people who didn't see me, or to opportunities that drained me. Didn't realize how much I was sacrificing to be good. When I finally gave myself permission to say no, not out of defensiveness, but out of self-trust, everything changed. The self-care of no is not a one-time decision. It's a practice, a culture of learning, a reclamation. It's a reminder that we, as autistic people, don't have to be extractable to be worthy. We don't have to be agreeable to be included. We don't have to be palatable to be good. We are allowed to take up space to protect our energy, to say no, not as a last resort, but as a powerful protective yes to ourselves. I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for honoring your time, your presence, and your body's truth. I hope something in this talk gave you permission to listen more closely to your no, not as a refusal of connection, but as an invitation to deeper self-care. I hope you feel affirmed in your need for boundaries. I hope you feel less alone in the discomfort of unlearning and more anchored in the possibility of what comes next. This work is ongoing. This healing is layered, but you're not doing it alone. We are building a new rhythm and a new culture, a new way of being in relationship with ourselves and each other. One that starts with trust, not performance. One that makes room for slowness, rest, honesty, and spaciousness. One that starts simply and powerfully with a softly spoken no.